Hello! This is one video of a two-part series, and the first showed how to create a floating snowflake ornament, and now I'll show you step by step how to make the coordinating snowflake box. Here's a list of the materials used for this project. Before we jump into the tutorial, I wanted to discuss some of the variations for this project. First, you'll want to measure the depth of your ornament from front to back. The dimensions I'm using today are for a 3-inch glass disc ornament, measuring 1.5 inches from the front to the back. The second variation to consider is, do you plan to die cut or emboss your ornament box top? Or are you working with a 1.75 inch depth ornament? If yes to either of these, you'll want to pay attention to the extra steps necessary to trim the box top pieces down to 6 inches. If not, if you're working with the 1.5 inch depth and you're not going to die cut or emboss your ornament, then those extra steps aren't necessary, and I'll be sure to call that out in the tutorial. Let's start with our 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and you're going to trim it down to the necessary dimension. Again, from my tutorial, I'm going to use the 6 1/4 inch measurement, and along the short edge of your paper, we're going to score at 1.5 and 4 3/4 inches. And then along the long edge, we're going to score at 1.5 inches, 4 3/4, 6 1/4, and 10 inches. All right, now go ahead and grab your scissors. And we're going to start molding this piece of paper into a box by cutting along the first score line 1. Okay, I'm cutting straight up to the 1.5 inch horizontal score line, and then just to the left of it to make this tiny little triangle wedge. On score line 2, cut straight up, and then just to the right of it. Okay, and then on score line 3, we're just cutting straight up. We're going to get back to finishing the box top afterwards, after one of the next steps. Okay, so go ahead and flip your paper over along the far right first score line, cut straight up and to the right. On score line 2, cut straight up and to the left. And then on score line 3, cut straight up. Now again, if you don't plan to die cut or emboss, and you're using the 6 1/4 inch width paper, then you do not need to do these next steps. But for the others who are going to be die cutting and embossing, or you're using a 6 3/4 inch width paper, you need to do these trimmings. Okay, so this first trim was off the top, and I'm just taking off 1/8 of an inch. Same thing for each side here. My total width right now is 6 1/4 inches, and I need to get my paper to go through my 6 inch die cut and embossing machine. So I'm cutting off 1/8 of an inch off of each of these 3 sides of the box top. You'll also notice that I folded the pieces that I had already cut just to make it a little easier to put it through my paper trimmer. Now, if you're working with the 6 3/4 inch width paper, you're actually going to be trimming off about 3/4 of an inch off of the left and the right, not the top. Okay, so you're just going to trim off the left and the right 3/4 of an inch to get your total width from 6 3/4 down to 6. All right, now we're going to finish cutting and molding this into a foldable box. So picking up our scissors again, we're now going to start at the 4th score line at the bottom of it and cut up diagonally to the 3rd score line. Okay, again at the 4th score line, at the bottom, we're going to cut diagonally up to the top of the third score line. Next, from the edge of the paper, we're going to cut off this little triangle from score line to score line. I have the little template in the top left-hand corner if that's a little confusing. Now I'm cutting up on the fourth score line, and you can cut this tiny little wedge again to make it easier to fold. Now I'm going to start by die cutting my box top. So I'm building my sandwich for my die cut and emboss machine. You can see now how the 6-inch width for the box top, it's now going to fit through my machine. You can see it compared to the cutting plates here. So now I'm using a peekaboo die. You can really use anything you want here. A peekaboo die is something that actually is only removing little pieces of the image and is not actually die cutting an entire image to come out. So you can see here as I'm removing the pieces, it didn't cut out an entire snowflake, it just cut little pieces into my cardstock. All right, now I'm fitting it into my 4.5-inch wide embossing folder. You can use any embossing folder, there's many that are 6 inches out there. This is the winter snow embossing folder that coordinates with this die set. All right, now that I'm done with my die cutting and embossing, you'll see that some of it wasn't embossed on the side, and that's okay, but I just love the detail that this adds to my box top. Now comes the fun part of assembling our box. However, I totally skipped scoring these extra lines. So before you add your adhesive, be sure to score along all the rest of your remaining lines. Okay, I'm going to realize that about now. And I put adhesive on the 4 square tabs. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and assemble it. I'm folding the tabs inward and lining it up with the edge of the rectangle sides. Fold it inside and attach one at a time. Okay, I had a little extra over here. My measurement wasn't exact, so I'm just snipping off anything that isn't smooth. Okay, and again, score all your lines before you start to assemble. Makes it a little bit easier. All right, so I'm scoring these diagonal cuts. Scoring and burnishing. Folding. Pressing it down. All right, now these last 2 tabs, these triangle tabs, putting some adhesive here. I also recommend a little bit of liquid glue right on that tip. And I'll show you that, I think, in just a moment. Okay. Yeah, those tips right there. They were a little loose, so I had a little bit of liquid glue right there on the corner. And there we have it. There is our completed box. You're now free to decorate it as you wish. The last little piece that I added was a snowflake die cut out of the Bombing Blue glimmer paper. I guess I could have done this before I assembled the box, but and there you have it. Thanks always for joining me today. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. See you next time.